Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frenfrica Studio, and this is the Creative Hustler Show. Today, our guest is Tiffanie Mang. She's a plain,
Hello.
artist. She has worked in Loving Vincent, doing like the animations frame by frame, but like paintings. And yeah, if you see her art, like she's really amazing. So, welcome,
Wow.
Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
So, for the people who don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get started into art? What made you choose this career? Pretty much all the process that took you to come to this point.
Right. So let's see. I was born and raised in San Diego, and I was basically drawing and painting since I was 6 years old. And I didn't know that I wanted to. I didn't know how I wanted to take that, like my love for art, into a career until I watched Avatar. And when I saw the visuals and the environments for that movie, I fell in love. And I said, "Oh, that's what I want to do. I want to like work in film." So I applied to all these schools. I got into USC, got rejected from UCLA, and all my other schools, they weren't my top choices. So, I decided to go to USC. So I studied animation and digital arts there. Um, and so it was a really great experience. They let us explore with all different kinds of mediums from like 2D to 3D. And it was there that I really fell in love with like illustration and concept art and digital painting, which I kind of self-taught myself up till college. Like I always just, did everything studio work, AP studio art and all that stuff. So yeah, I fell in love with that, and I knew that I wanted to work in film. So my first job out of college was working on a game as a concept artist, and that was supposed to be published with Ouya, but then that actually fell short because we lost funding. So then I was scrambling for jobs and stuff, and I was also selling a lot of my art on markets, kind of just expanding, like just trying all these different things. And then I actually started working as a PA at wow, I'm blanking at PSYOP. Sorry, I blanked on the name. So yeah, I was like that desperate that actually I did at first short term before I transitioned into starting to be an artist there. But actually, when I transitioned to starting being an artist, I got a call to work on Loving Vincent. So it was sort of fishy timing there. So I decided to leave PSYOP and fly over to Poland to do a test for Loving Vincent. And I'll definitely talk more about that later. But to keep it short now, it was just an amazing experience. I lived in Poland for 6 months, and I worked on 6 shots on the film. And for those of you who don't know, it's the world's first animated feature film completely painted in oils. So we were basically drowning in oil paint. But I love painting in oil, so it was pretty much a dream come true. So yeah, I came back, traveled after that for 2 months, came back, and I knew that I wanted to pursue fine art more. Actually, that was like, I feel like that was my first most calling. So I went back home to San Diego, got a studio with my best friend, and that's where I am now.
Nice. Something that I see that happens a lot is that when you set up a goal that you think you really want and start like working through it, like these other options start coming up, and you sometimes you realize that maybe your initial goal is not the one that you should be pursuing, but maybe this other one. But
Yeah.
you wouldn't have discovered that if you haven't started in the first place. So that is a really great process to go through.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. I thought that, I'd always actually, I've never, oh, I forgot to say that I worked a year at a studio after Loving Vincent. I worked as a concept artist in another studio. And then that was great too, but that actually made me realize how I wanted to pursue fine art even more, because I was seeing all my friends from Loving Vincent. They are all independent artists, and I was seeing them always drawing and painting every day. And I said, gosh, I'm so jealous. I really want to do that. So yeah, it's true. Like if I hadn't worked on Loving Vincent, I think it would have totally altered my whole path of life right now. As dramatic as that sounds, it's true. I think I met so many wonderful people on that film, and that experience by itself was really life-changing. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, if you don't open yourself up to new opportunities, you really never know what could lie ahead. And I think that's the beauty of it, kind of not knowing what exactly is planned, but grasping certain opportunities and seeing how they can mold you. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely something I can relate to because many years ago, like I started like trying to put my business, and in the beginning it was like a web design thing and app development. And truly didn't love that, but all the things that I learned from there helped me out, like put the studio, and then taking a project that I didn't knew how to do about. Made me look for people who have done a similar project and ask them, and this is pretty much how this show started. So, like, uh, tiny decisions like that. If I saw them back then, I would have say like, "Oh yeah, like this is not that important." No, they truly took like a huge weight in the long term.
Exactly. It's really interesting how things pan out like that. Totally not really.
Yeah, definitely. And on that end, do you see like a common mistake that people when they are starting out, artists in general, make? The Well, you mentioned about being close and not too open to see maybe other opportunities, but uh, if you see many artists who are starting out, what would you say that are the most common mistakes that you can see into them?
That's a tricky question. Well, I always tell people, for one thing, like when I haven't been to like a networking event in a while, but when I used to go for a while, a common mistake I see when people are younger people, who are fresh out of college, they tend to overmarket themselves too much to professionals, and that's sort of a common mistake I see because it actually comes off as really pushy and kind of unappealing. If they're trying to push their work in someone's face, they're trying to over explain themselves. I guess be confident about your work, and always try to make a connection with people outside of art, not just through your art. Like talk to them about different topics like sports or books or something, and people will remember you for that as well, not just for a great portfolio. People will remember you for the person you are as well. And I think also, like never think, always be open to improvement, and not just, obviously everyone says, improving, like that's yes, but also, open to new styles, to new, yeah, like you said before, like new opportunities, because you never know how that will shape you. And a lot of people, a lot of people, like I could have stayed in PsyOp, and maybe I would have, I don't know, been a style artist, or I could have, I don't know, I could have, chose to, stay in LA. But I guess the path you choose is going to, I feel like I'm repeating myself right now, so I'm just going to stop. But yeah, I guess don't over network yourself, and don't confine yourself to just one physical space or mental space. Always be open to freeing your mind to different possibilities. Yeah.
On that end, you just mentioned a topic that into these interviews has come up a lot of times. I see that many of the people who I interview who are doing really great really hated this concept about networking, but they had to use it in order to become
Yeah.
to get to this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see that still there is a lot of people who really, really, really hate that concept. Any tips that you have? Any advice on that end?
Yeah, I hate it too. I mean, honestly, I'm a very social person, but when it comes to like, oh, let's go to this networking event, like, oh, I just cringe. Like, I don't wanna have to like think about like giving out business cards or whatever. But for me, like, I find like to not think about it as networking. And like, I mean, it's good to go to these networking events, but like even just thinking of it as meeting people and sharing your passion for art, like kind of rework mind to think of it in a new way. And I've found that I've met really inspirational people, not through networking events, but just through like other random events, like just like, I don't know, unexpected, like, oh, you're I don't know, you're at this concert, or oh, like this, I don't know, painting thing, or like not just a specific like where like it's catered to networking, like just even just reaching out to people via social media. Like a lot of times I won't be afraid to be like, wow, I love this artist's work. I'll just message them. I don't care if they don't know me. It's about also, I think, just having that boldness to not thinking like, oh, they don't know me, like I don't know, they can think I'm weird, like, you know, I just go for it. So I've done that to plenty of artists, and you know, that's how you start a conversation and a friendship as well, because you know, they see that you're genuinely passionate about you know, learning more, and that you know, you like their work, and it's not so much like, oh, can you look at my portfolio? It's like, I really like your work, and that's why I'm reaching out to you.
Yeah, on that end, I think I have like a bit of an unfair advantage because, well, pretty much I come from a third world country where art is pretty much null. Like there are a couple of art schools, but not real good art schools, and obviously there's not much opportunities about that. So, uh, for me, like like when I get to meet you or somebody else, and I see their art and what they have worked like. Uh, for me, it feels kind of a miracle. Like, okay, like this should not be happening. Like, I should be in a call
Oh,
center or something like that.
yeah.
And there is like a huge, huge excitement coming from
That's
me.
awesome.
Right now, I have been able to, through practice, to kind of uh, let's say tone down the excitement, physically speaking. But if you see the first interviews, I'm like,
Nice
pre-
to talk to you. This is so cool.
yeah, exactly. So I think that's on the networking part. I think that's uh, kind of my unfair advantage because for me, like, uh, I also try to not make this something that, oh, like is my new normal and not care about, because I try to remind me like, no, you should, like, if things went like they should have gone, you should be in a call center and this should not be happening. And pretty much all this is just like a huge miracle. So on that end, I think that communicates really well, and that helps me out. But for example, when I have gone to LA and I have gone to these events, I see people who maybe started out slow, but now work in like bigger studios. It's like kind of normal to them. So that's when it comes. Maybe that's when the networking comes a little bit weird because, as you say, like they are trying to overmarket themselves, and maybe they are trying to do some things that are not genuine. So
Yeah,
maybe that is. I think.
yeah. I mean, it could. Yeah, it's definitely like. I mean, if like some, I mean, at events you say, oh, this person's at this place now, and this person's at. But I mean, I don't really look at it. It's more like, oh, like let's see, you know, how your art is now, or it's cool just to see, just to, I guess, catch up with people too. But you know, I get what you mean. Like when you know you're full of excitement and like you can't contain it. I definitely have that too when I go to galleries and I meet like fine artists that I admire so much. I don't even try to hide it. I freak out. The last time mm, I was at Arcadia Gallery in Pasadena, and it was kind of funny because it was sort of I had just done a workshop before, and I had seen advertisements for the show, and I was like, should I go? Maybe I shouldn't. I kind of like the art, and sometimes you can't really tell on Instagram, like, you know, how good the art until you see it in person. And I was like, screw it, I'm gonna go. You know, I'm tired. I just want to relax after my workshop. I'll go look at some art. So I drove from Hollywood to Pasadena, and it was the opening reception. So some of the artists were there, and oh my gosh, I was so blown away. Like the art was amazing, and I met Jesse Powell, Kevin Cordier, and just a bunch of other artists that I follow on Instagram, and I actually had the chance to meet in person, and I was just fangirling. Like I was like, oh my gosh. And so I totally know how you feel. It was a really great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think things get a little bit worse on that end when, like, you see the art through the pictures and it looks amazing, and then you see it in real life, and you start
So much
seeing details that you weren't able to see in the pictures, and it looks way more amazing.
better. especially for fine art, like to see the brushstrokes in person, it's just I can't compare it to anything. Like galleries, can never ever go into oblivion because you need to see the artwork in person. Like I know everything's going online and a lot of things are posted to social media, but to see a work in person just transports you to totally a whole new realm, that versus just seeing it online. So yeah, definitely.
Nice. Now, I'm going to ask a little bit of a tricky
Sorry.
question, but what is something that you didn't expect it at all in the beginning when you started your career, uh, that you learned that is really, really important now, but again, like at the beginning, you didn't even thought that it was going to be that important, or you didn't even knew about it?
Wow, that's a good question. Thinking on the spot. Something that I knew. I can think of. I think. I need to think about that more. Can we get to that? Come back to that question.
Yeah, sure. Okay, then the other part.
I can't think of. I'm like, oh, can't think.
On the other part, this is an easier one. What was something that from the beginning you knew it was going to be really important, and it became true, and it is really important.
I was actually that. I mean, it became really important or not so important.
That something that you knew it was important from the very beginning, and yeah, you ended up like realizing, okay, yes, this was important.
I think. Well, I think for me right now in my state of art, I think I'm sort of finding in terms of like art itself, I'm sort of finding out, like going back to the basics. Like I never had like formal art. Like I never went to school for art. Like I studied animation and then I took art classes, but it was never like in college. I took like, many years of art class. And then I took a few classes for, illustration or concept design. But I think for me, I'm kind of circling back now where I've seen a lot of art, I've done some, and after painting, for a little bit and doing plein air and all that, I think I'm one of the things that I was saying was that a good painting, like, always goes back to the basics of composition and value. And like, I'm a big person on color. So something I used to love was like, I used to always observe in paintings, like color, the color is beautiful. That makes it a great painting. Oh my gosh, I love it. But now I'm finding out more and more as I'm studying more fine artists, how important design is and how important like a good design with good value can go a long way than just covering it up with color. So for me, on an artistic end, that's what I've been realizing, and it's kind of been really interesting because when I go out and paint, I'm actually thinking about, I used to be, oh, I love the colors, I have to capture it, but I'm also thinking about more design, and that's something that oh, well, I guess that answers the first question. I never really thought about design before, even as an illustrator, or which is really crazy to think about, but like I'm confident about color, but I'm not really confident about design. Actually, I'm always like doubting my compositions and stuff like that. And so something when I started plein air painting, because that's such a big part of my life, when I started plein air painting, I would just, whatever I saw in front of me, I would just paint, and I wouldn't think about altering things. Now, in the past year, I've thought so much more about how important design is and how you are not a slave to what you see, but you can, change certain things up. So that's kind of what I've learned. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm reading this amazing book by Edgar Payne right now, and and it's just his paintings. I think I have heart attacks. I'm going to show you guys the book because I just bought it.
Awesome.
I know I put it on my story on Instagram, but I'm just going to show it again. Oh my gosh, I already like sticking, but it's a huge book. If you guys have not gotten it, you need to get it because the paintings in here are so high res. It's ridiculous. And I feel like when I look at them, I actually have heart attacks because it's so amazing and like my heart can't contain it. That's literally how I feel. But just if I can just like find just some of the so high. That's this one. I mean, like, okay, hold on. Let me try to find. There's one painting of a wave that I love, and I have to find it right now. Oh, I think it's in the beginning. I'll just show the beginning. But it's a huge book. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, I can.
Probably really bad, but anyways, I mean on the screen. But it's an amazing book, and everyone should get it. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been personally realizing. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. You answered both of them pretty good. For me, I think one of the things that I didn't thought about in the beginning that much was maybe on the concept of time itself. Of how
Yeah,
because I think in the beginning I was so obsessed of doing things to work now or to work
right.
this year, something like that. Like it was very short time, and I have learned like how if you can really try to, let's say, have a real grasp of what 10 years into the future will look like,
Yeah.
and 30 years and things like that, and understanding that there are many actions that you will repeat over and over and over again through your
Mhm.
day, weeks, months, years, and so on. And if you think those things in that way, like the whole strategy goes completely different. Like it is a very different game to try to think of how are you going to do things right now, that
Very good point.
compared to, okay, we need to play a game that we can play every day for
For many years.
10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
and that changes
And
everything.
that's a really good point. Actually, I've definitely realized that too. Yeah. That kind of like doing things for now versus planning for the future, or thinking about your business in a way. Actually, another thing I just realized. Oh, I have to go get the book really quick. Okay. Well, anyways, it's on my bed, so I'm not gonna get it. But that reminds me of what you said. I read this book. I just finished reading it last night called The E-Myth: Why Small Businesses Don't Work. Have you
I
read
know
that book?
that. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Isn't it amazing? Like what you're saying was kind of reminding what I read. It's such a good book. I highly recommend anyone to get that too. But it sort of changed like my mentality, like not only in business, because as an independent artist now, I have to think about that. I have no business mind, so I'm like, okay, how do I make my own small business work? And I'm sure it's like that for many artists. But I like the book because it's just like not really just only about businesses. It's about like your life as well, and how you sort of put yourself, like your business is an extension of you. So if you constantly aim to improve and evolve and change, your business will improve for the better as well. And I never thought of it that way. It's always about how do I make more money? Like how do I sustain myself? But you can't look at it always or only like that, I guess. So yeah, I'm so glad you've read it. So you have it.
Yeah, pretty much was one of the first books that I read when I was
Oh,
starting in entrepreneurship.
yeah,
At the
yeah,
time, I had the web design business that I talked to you about, but definitely a great book. It helped me out pretty much for every anybody who hasn't read it. The E-Myth is a book that contains a lot of the mistakes that you should really avoid. So it helped me out to avoid many of those.
yeah. Such a good book. Yeah, I feel like I need to read the whole thing again now to digest all the information.
Another one I would recommend is
Yeah,
from Jim Collins, Good to Great, and and the book starts really strong. Like it goes like, oh, good is the enemy of great. Like, we don't have great schools because we have good schools. We don't have great politicians because we have good politicians, and it is really easy to pretty much. Oh, and again, like, because like we don't have good relationships, we don't have great relationships, because we have good ones, and good is really easy to get
Comfort zone.
comfortable with. Yeah, and great takes a whole different game.
That's exactly what Gerber says too in the end of the book. Like, you always have to have the veil up, and that's because that veil, that curtain in front of you, is your comfort zone, and your comfort zone is what makes you just do good things, but not great things. I guess, like you just said in the other book. So kind of all connected, I feel.
Yeah, and that book, Good to Great, is pretty much like a huge study. Like, this guy pretty much created studies for big corporations, and he had made a book about great companies, and people told them like, oh yeah, but like, let's say, oh, it's easier to say like, it's easy to say like, oh, you should do this when you're Apple, when you're Amazon,
Yeah,
Facebook, things like that. But what happens with this, the smaller ones and things like that? So this guy started creating this study about 5 years, comparing companies who when they started studying them, like, they look really, really, really the same,
yeah,
and at the end of like many years, like,
mm,
the company that was doing exactly the same and had like all the same resources was like really small, and the other one like was like really huge. And one of the things, like, the main difference that this guy found out was like pretty much ego. So when like the CEO and the top guy was egocentric, so let's say, for example, Apple, like, Steve Jobs was like a great leader for Apple, and he took the company into a great model. Once he went away, like, everything crumbled, and it didn't happen just one time. It happened two times. Like, they fired him first, and the company started to crumble. He came back, like, Apple pretty much was reborn and became huge. Now he now he's dead. Now they can get him. They can get him back. So pretty much, if you are seeing that Apple is making a lot of mistakes
yeah,
now, and the reason was that he analyzed this was because, okay, like, this type of CEOs make things so that they cannot work without them, and
yeah,
the other guys is like, it's not about them, it's about the team. So
right,
they set up things so everybody who is helping them out is like, they know that they are in the position that they need to be, and they have everything that they need to succeed in their own way.
yeah. That's yeah, exactly. It's like you shouldn't work in your business, you should work on your business, right? Because if you work in your business, but when you're gone, it just will crumble. So you have to find a way to make it so that it survives without you, but you carry on that legacy. Exactly.
Yeah. On that topic, have you ever had let's call it a failure or a parent failure that in the beginning when it happened, it seemed really, really bad, but it set you up for better things in the future?
Oh yeah, tons. I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely. When the first game that I worked on, that was a big roller coaster ride because that was actually we had developed that game in college, and I was the producer and art director. And then we got picked up by a company who saw our game, they really liked it, and they wanted to release it on their console. So we were really excited. We worked on it for about a year, and so when we got the when when things were going downhill, then they told us, sorry, we can't fund your game anymore. It's just not happening. We're being bought out by someone else. Like, it was just total, like, what do we do now? And I remember thinking, like, I invested so much in this, like, what do I do now? And so during that time, during that in-between time, I definitely felt like a total failure. I can't say that word. I felt like I didn't feel like I was living up to my potential. Um, I forgot what I was doing. I applied to some jobs, I got rejected, and then to make money, I don't remember what I was doing. I was like freelancing, but I was also like selling my art on markets, which like at like 66 markets, I was doing a lot of WonderCon, DCon, a lot of conventions, all that stuff. So that was a really good experience too. And then wait, I forgot what the second part of your question was. So a failure I had, and then
That set you up for success?
oh, okay. So then, yeah, I mentioned that I worked as a PA for a little bit at PsyOp. And at first I was so desperate at that point. I was like, to one of my best friends, Talisa, I was like, girl, you work at Psy, like, is it possible for you to get me like any job that I don't care? Like, it's just, and she's like, well, there's a PA opening. I was like, sure, I'll take it. But I was actually like, this is one of these experiences, muted my phone, gosh. This is one of those experiences where I thought, it would suck being something that not doing an art job. And I don't tell a lot of people this because sometimes I'm embarrassed, when I say like, I was a PA for a couple months. But honestly, the experience taught me so much. Like I learned how the insides of a studio work. I learned how to serve clients. I learned what it means to be on time, what it means to multitask. And all these things are essential as an artist. It's not just about creating pretty art. It's about kind of having that holistic as a character, all these traits as a character of multitasking and, being able to, put others before you. And so I learned a lot of that being a PA and being, and then at the same time, since I wasn't doing like art, I was freelancing as a PA, but since I wasn't doing, like my job wasn't art, it actually pushed me to do art even more. So I learned that about myself. Like at any break that I had, I was doing digital paintings. Like I was plein air painting, like any break. And then at night I would go home and paint as well. So I actually produced more art and I got better that way, even though my day job was in art. So it was still pushing me in other ways. So I learned that no matter what situation you're in, you just have to have the correct mindset to still push yourself to get better. And just because that you're not always doing art, that you're not learning anything. You're always learning something from every situation.
Definitely.
And it's just your mindset. Yeah.
I also recommend people like my very first deal was at a call center in Dell, and at the beginning I didn't knew what I was signing up for. Well, like I was just really young and really excited to have my first job,
Yeah.
but I really, 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 really ended up hating that. Like I never feel that bad in my life, and I have gone through some horrible things, but that the best way to describe it was like pretty much like crushing my soul. And when I finally quit that job, I felt like a happiness that I have never experienced. And obviously, for the most part, like I told people that I really, really hated that and that I don't never want to come back to that again, obviously. But if I have to be honest, like if I hadn't had that experience,
Right.
I think I wouldn't value the same way I do when things like this are coming, when we get projects, like because even when today now that we have problems with our business, with our clients in animation and all that, even the hardest moments that we have gone through that, I sit down, it's like, it's still not as bad as that one.
Yeah, like you know how to exactly. Like you have to go through those moments to know that you can tackle. I had that exact same thing recently, and I'm blanking out. It was yeah. I totally know what you mean. It was with I just recently did a plein air competition in Capitola, and those 3 days I was literally waking up at 7 and painting till 6 whenever it get dark. So I did like 5 paintings a day, and I never knew I could do that. But it wasn't until I did that I know, okay, I know what I'm capable of. And so it's kind of similar as yours. I totally know what you mean though. It's like we have a Chinese saying that says you're failing forward. So it's like I firmly believe you have to go through those failings or those really awful situations to know can, otherwise you're just really not evolving at all. Like you're just, you know, if one good thing happens, something you can't, you're not really growing. And like those kind of situations causes or forces a person to grow. And I think that's really important as an artist and a person.
Yeah, because so far, like since I started like doing the animated studio and doing the interviews, and it's been 3 years now, and we had many problems, we had many failures, many things. Oh, we are going to do this thing, thinking that it's going to go well, and that created more problems that that anything else. And even in
Yeah.
those very stressful moments, like I haven't had any moment in these 3 years where I can say, okay, that was worse than being a call center agent. No, like this, like I never, even in the most stressful moments, I never felt that bad, and that creates like a, a, a different perspective, let's
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
that helps you out to push through.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. I guess I can say I'm happy you went through that experience. So now you know that whatever hardships you encounter with your studio, you know that you can overcome it. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you ever met like a smart driven artist that is a student starting out, uh, that is about to enter the real world, let's say, what will be the advice that you will give to that person? And what will you tell that person to ignore?
I would say never settle. Because it's really easy when people like I would say I've never worked at a huge studio. No, I still can't say I've ever worked at Pixar or DreamWorks, but you know, like any of, you know, those things that people consider the in group or whatever you call it, like, you know, like maybe a lot of times, I don't know, but maybe a lot of times when people think that they get in, they can settle on that they're, you know, that they've made it. I would say never settle. That goes for me as a fine artist right now as well. I'm always aiming to improve, and every time I look at my paintings from two months back, I hate it because I feel internally I'm seeing something new. But I would tell a student, you know, never settle. Always go for improving your craft, because in the end, it's you against yourself, and you challenge yourself, and no one else can do it better than you. And I forgot the last part of the question. What?
What advice should they ignore as well?
Ignore. That. Uh, I don't know what advice have I gotten. I guess that, I don't know. For me personally, like maybe it's because um, it is true. Like when you do know more people, it's easier to, like, not easier, but you have like, I guess, a bigger chance of, I guess, getting to a studio. That wasn't really the, I mean, I know a lot of people, but it's not like, you know, I worked at a lot of studios or something. I mean, I'm still young, but you know, you don't know. But I would say like, like don't just depend on like sucking up to people, or like, you know, the people, you know, like in the end, it's like you know, going back to my first advice, like, you know, you're still your own challenger. And I think you should be, yeah, so don't just depend on like networking, like, and then always work on honing your craft first and foremost. And also, I just thought of something else, and now I forgot it again. It'll come back to me.
No problem, no problem. Uh, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do to get back to your center?
Oh God, all the time. I think every day now as an independent artist, it's crazy. Like if it's funny because for me, like I don't like set routine, but at the same time I do. Like I'm really conflicting. So like sometimes I'll literally wake up and be like, I want to do this, this, and this today. Then I'll change it, like, but maybe I feel like actually going to the studio. But maybe I feel like recording at a studio. Actually, right now I feel like doing my own wash painting. Then I feel like, no, I should plein air. And I'm always like constant. Like my mind is just always like this, and this, and this. Oh no, I should read though. I need to spend time to read because I have all these art books I want to read. Um, And I know for me personally, what I should do is probably, well, I do write out schedules every day. And I still get overwhelmed. So like every day, the day before, I'll write out bullet points of what I want to tackle or what I need to do, and what I want to do. I probably could be even, maybe I need to write down like a whole organized schedule, like from 10 to 1 workout, or like, 9 to 10 workout, 10 to 12 this, 12 to 1. But then I'm also spontaneous, so I don't like following such a strict thing. It's hard. But yeah, I get overwhelmed all the time. I'm constantly in angst because I feel like I'm never good enough of the artist I want to be. And that feeling can be suffocating sometimes, but it also can push you. So you asked me what I do to overcome, you said, or?
Yeah. What do you do to find your center back and pretty much?
Oh, find my center back. I think for me, it's either like when I feel like I have all this stuff going on, I'll just go out in nature and I'll just paint a little bit. And lately, what I've been realizing with that is another epiphany that I've had is that I've lately released that stress from when I go out to plein air painting. I like have to create a beautiful painting, beautiful in a subjective sense. What I might think is nice, other people might not. What I think is ugly, people will be like, "Whoa, that's so cool." But as in like a perfect, a academically nice painting. And lately I've been just, painting mainly to take color notes or to really just kind of release that inner turmoil that I have, put it on a piece of painting, and whatever translates from here to there, even if it's what I was aiming for in my head, even if it didn't come out, I'm still okay with it. And so reaching that has been really helpful. So sometimes I'll go out and paint and I'll relieve, and just for painting, it's not like, oh, I have to like paint something beautiful. Or sometimes I'm like, oh, I have to paint something to post because I haven't posted in a while. That is totally the wrong mindset anyone can have. And when I think like that, it's just wrong. And sometimes it's hard to, because you're always surrounded by social media, like, oh my God, I need to keep up with my social media posts and like blah, blah, blah. Oh, I hate that. I wish I could just fall off the world and never have to post anything. But unfortunately, that's also part of being an independent artist, is to keep up that social media repertoire shit. But yeah, I think just going out and just enjoying and just being one with nature, that helps me come back to my center. Even if I do a good painting or not, I come back and I feel more calm. And sometimes, like yesterday, I wasn't feeling so well. I was feeling I think I had some tension in my chest. So I think that was some stress. So I just did things that were not related to art. I finished the book, the E-Myth book. I watched a rock climbing documentary, but I didn't do much painting. And sometimes you have to do things that aren't related to painting at all, and that will give you new insight to painting. And it's really cool. But I found that more and more that actually does happen. Like things like, you're hanging out with friends and you're like, oh, talking to you just, gave me a new idea. Or like, you're eating, you're like, huh, I just had a really, like, simple things. Like, huh, you don't always just try to drown yourself in art. Try to surround yourself with balanced other things. Reading is really important. Like, watching informational documentaries, watching podcasts, I don't know. It's hard for me because I always just want to paint. I always just, like, when I feel guilty, I can't even give myself breaks because I feel guilty when I don't paint. It's really bad. But it's really important to give yourself rest. And I'm learning that more and more. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that part very well as well. Like, I had of like myself, like, okay, I have this once a week with friends, and pretty much started setting up like times to do other stuff
Yeah.
because I got tired of that moment where it was very late at night. I'm tired
Yeah.
and working something, and then I go back to bed, and right when I'm about to sleep, like some idea
Yeah.
pops up,
Yeah. I have that too. Yeah.
and then I'm done. Like I cannot go back to sleep. Like my mind start racing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
to avoid that and to be able to sleep, I start to pretty much try to oblige myself to do all these other things because that's when these ideas come. come out, like as you say.
Exactly. Like sometimes you get time I won't sleep until I'm painting because I know for my soul that I need that. But and then that will help me fall asleep better. So sometimes I'll stay up really late just to do a painting, you know, just to get this idea out of my head. And sometimes we need that too. But then at the same time, health is so important. And that, I think, you know, if you don't have your health, you can't do anything. And I'm learning that, you know, more and more. And my grandma always told me that, my grandparents, and I think to take care of yourself is most important. And it's hard as artists, but you need to do it too. Like sleep is so important. I'm so bad at that. So I totally understand, like, yeah, when all these ideas pop up. So it's that constant battle, but finding that mid ground, I think, yeah.
Definitely. In the last 5 years, have you added a new belief, way of thinking, or any lesson that has improved a lot your life?
Like any, like not related to art, yeah, definitely. Like any kind of more, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've been thinking actually a lot this year, and I was doing some reflecting, and I realized that, some makeup on my face. I realized that um, when I want to change myself, it all starts with yourself and in here and like changing your perspective. Like you can't force yourself to change by forcing yourself to do something. It all comes with changing your mentality. Like for example, I mean I already work out, but like if let's say I wanted to, I don't work out and I wanted to, I can't just be like, okay, I'm gonna work out and that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna wake up at 9 o'clock every day and I'm gonna do it. You can maybe do it for like 3 days and, you know, wake up at like 9 o'clock and work out. But then if you don't have that first changing your mindset of why it's important to you and why you want to do it, then it won't last for long. But if you change your mindset to be like, working out gives me energy. I find that it gives me energy. It makes me more awake. And I actually really enjoy working out. Why are the reasons that I enjoy working out? What benefits does it give me? And you actually change that initial mindset, you'll find everything stems from that, and more joy comes from doing whatever you're doing. So I've learned that through, you know, many things, not just through art, like, or not just into art, but through a lot of things that I can't think of specifically right now. But really that, and also just being, you know, more open-minded and more resilient to things, you know, like being a fine artist and starting out, you know, I learned a lot of things about business, about how to manage my artwork, about how to promote myself, and kind of also, you know, even though like bad things happen to you, kind of looking at them as something like, for example, you know, with the whole, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows, but, you know, with the whole Tina thing and the, you know, how my artwork got damaged. I'm not going to go into detail with that because that's not the point. But, you know, someone told me, I also thought, at least this happened to me in the beginning of my art career. So I know what to expect for the future. So reworking my mindset that way, I was like, yeah, maybe it was a blessing that way. And maybe that through this, you know, I'm able to prepare myself for future situations instead of being like, ah, damn it, you know, like just always mulling over the same thing. You know, you learn from it, you move on, and you improve from it. So things like that, I'm thankful that happened because, you know, then you wouldn't learn. And plenty of those things have happened. You know, I've learned a lot of things, you know, failed a lot, and all those things, reworking it from a different thing. For example, in E-Myths, in Gerber's book, E-Myth, let me just grab the book really quick. You guys should get this book. But one thing I read last night that I thought was really cool was that he explained dojo. I don't know if you remember that part. Where'd you go? Said, one line that I really like is, a dojo is an arena of confined conflict where we confront an opponent who is not an opponent, but rather a partner engaged in helping us understand ourselves more fully. I thought that was really cool. Looking at all your hardships as something to help you understand yourself more. Yeah.
Definitely. Part of me, like, uh, I think I still a little bit bad at understanding what my true limits are in a good way and in a bad way as well.
Yeah.
For example, the way how this show started was like we say yes to a project that we didn't knew how to do. So we start looking at Kickstarter to see if we can find people who pretty much could have done something similar, and we find a big project that made almost $1 million and was looking very similar to ours. So I contacted the guy who created it and pretty much sending him an email, started doing something else, and didn't thought much about it. He said yes. Once he said yes, I started look out who he was, and he was Fred Seibert, and the founder of Frederator, and pretty much creator of all the producers of all these cartoons in Cartoon Networks, Dexter, Powerpuff Girls, now Adventure Time, Castlevania, all these things is, and my mind was blown. But something I realized like minutes later was like, if you knew who he was, like I, you wouldn't have sent that email. That thought came into my mind. Like,
Yeah.
if I had known who he was, I wouldn't have sent that email because I would have thought, oh, he's too big. Like he's not going
Right,
to,
right, right.
uh, uh, he's not going to say yes. Like all these kind of things. But he said yes, and we had the interview, and that was the very first episode of this show. Before I was even thinking about making a show or anything like that, and then I say, okay, let's try this again. And then the second interview was a Stephen Silver, and then we got Robert Kondo and Bobby Chiu, and pretty much never stop. And now the project that we were trying to do failed pretty much epically. But on the other side, like the same first interview was a connection 2 years later for our biggest client that we were doing a web series to help us out to even become better at our work. And at the end of that project, we became so much faster and better at doing things. So projects that will usually took us 1 month, now we were able to do it in 1 week.
There you go.
And all of that came from that email, and I still think about how something that small that
I know, it's so crazy, huh?
yeah, and I think like damn, like if you had gone through your mental limitation,
Oh,
none
yeah.
of this will have happened. We wouldn't be talking right now, and it's like uh, that's when I started like really getting into okay, you need to figure out what are the things that you think are impossible or your mental limitations where I know very well that there are some real limitations that, for example, I'm not going to go to a studio, pitch an idea, and get it approved in 1 month. I know that is a real thing that is not going to happen. But at the same time, it's like there are many other things that might be able to happen, and 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 I don't know, right? And the only way to know it is to test it, and
Yeah,
that's
exactly. That's totally agree.
that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with the summit, because I went like I finally got into this place of my mind. Okay, like let's test this like really 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 hard,
Yeah,
and that's when we started to put in all this together. So
I think it's
for
great.
me, it's like a huge test of my to see what my true limits are.
Right. I think it's great what you're doing, and I think that exactly like you chose to step out of your comfort zone and you just went for it. And I saw from the beginning beta, now beta whatever to now the website. It's come such a long way, and it's amazing that you guys are you're just hitting it hard, and things like these they result from a need for change, and that's inevitably gonna happen. And it's really cool that you just instead of just letting it sit in your mind, you actually just went out and did it. And that's a difference between, I think, people who just think about things and then people who actually do things. You know, of course, with calculated intention and thinking through, you know, I think it's going to be great. So I'm really excited to see what happens.
Hopefully so. And I'm going to ask you this question. This one is really, really hard for most people.
Okay.
Uh, let's say you wake up tomorrow and you are in a different dimension. You have a place to live and all that, but nobody knows about you, nobody knows about your art, but you have all your skills, all your experience, all the tools that you need to create your art, and $500 in your pocket. What do you do to get to this point, professionally speaking, as soon as possible?
I have $500 and I have all my art supplies.
Yes, and all your experience and skills.
Oh, I just paint nonstop every day until I have, you know, a bunch of paintings. Then I would invest in those 500 and um, maybe trade a bunch of paintings to, oh, I still have a place to live, right? So I transform that place that I live into my small studio and work from there. I paint every day. I don't care if people don't know me. Actually, my friend asked me, a couple of friends asked me, and they're like, if there's no one else on earth and it was just you, would you still paint? And I said, yeah, of course I would. And their argument was, really? Because I wouldn't paint if there wasn't an audience. Like, if there was no one to see my work, I don't know if I would paint. And I was like, oh, I would still paint. Because I know for me, I'm painting for myself. In the end, like, I still have all these things I want to paint and get out of. And I don't care if people see it or not. It's more for myself. So I know it was interesting. But if no one knew me, I would just still paint, and people are curious, I would tell them about it and sort of just not build a business more, but share my love for painting and just have it regrow that way, I guess. For the $500, I would probably I'd spend it on art supplies probably, because they'd probably maybe go out, and then maybe, I don't know much about business, so maybe like investing it in some stock. I don't know how that works, so I don't know, but I would still paint. That's what I would do first.
Nice. Uh, do you know any great opportunities for learning or anything like that online that people are not using that much or that are not that famous?
I mean, I know the really popular ones online, like CGMA, Schoolism. There's, I don't really know that many online classes, because I personally like being physically in a class. Not to say that online is not good or anything. It's still great for people who are, you know, not in the same vicinity and who are all around the world. For example, like Creative Summit that's coming up. That's going to be good. Other than that, I mean, I know there's, like, I think Academy of Art has online classes, colleges do. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't know too many, I guess. But the main ones, yeah, I think everyone knows.
Nice. Uh, for the last part, is there any advice that you would like to give for people who are starting out in art that we haven't talked about in this interview?
Any advice that we haven't talked about? Yeah, I would say just one thing. If you think you can't do something, just like always just say, oh, I don't think you can do it, just do it. Because you're gonna push yourself faster that way. Like, don't be like, oh, don't stay in your comfort zone. Because, you know, sometimes I do that too. And it makes me feel good. It's like, I know I can paint that. I know I can paint this. For example, the last painting I did was a huge painting of Mirador. Can't pronounce it. It's a place in Martigues. It was architectural. I don't like painting architectural. It was both. It was everything that I've never painted before. And I've never painted that big in size. It was an oil painting of 60 inches by 50 by 30, 60 inches by 36 inches, I think. So as tall as me, a little bit shorter than me, 4 inches, 5'4". But I had been thinking about it for a long time, and I didn't have the time to paint it until one day I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna do it. I didn't even think. I was like thinking, and I was like, why don't I just do it? What is stopping me? So I mocked up a thing in Photoshop, because that's how I started off. I do a few design reiterations, and then I toned my canvas, and one night I just went for it. And I did it, and I did the painting, I did like 3-4 days, because when I paint nonstop. But it's sort of things, if you think you can't do it, just do it. That's all. Just get out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone, like like Michael Gerber says, the comfort zone, it knows that it makes you feel good, but you're paying your ultimate price, which is your life. And I do agree with that, because you're not living your fullest potential when you're just staying in your comfort zone. So that's my advice.
Nice. If people want to find you out, find about you in the internet, what would be the best place to find about your art, about you?
I have an updated website. I'm going to post that soon. I recently reworked it, so that's tiffaniemang.com. And also, I mostly update. I have Facebook, and I update that too. I don't really update my art page, but more my personal page. So if you want to add me as a friend, feel free to. And I have Instagram, which is Tiffanie Mang Art. So you can find me there. I post most of my stuff there. Some things I post there, I don't even post on Facebook. So if you want to look at all the most even sketches that I'm too shy to show on Facebook, I'll probably post it on Instagram. Upcoming workshops I have, update my website on that, and Instagram. I do have some workshops coming up next year in Orange County, Colorado, hopefully, and Georgia. So I'm also trying to teach. I also love teaching. So for me, it's not so much teaching as sharing my passion for gouache, plein air, and landscape painting. So yeah, if you guys are interested in learning about gouache, just ask. And I'm trying to organize a workshop each month. Other than that, my email is tiffaniemangart@gmail.com. So people can email me through my website or just at that email. Everything is Tiffanie Mang Art. I made it really easy. So Facebook, Tiffanie Mang Art, Instagram, Tiffanie Mang Art, Gmail, Tiffanie Mang Art. So yeah.
Nice. Thanks a lot for giving us your time. I know that you have been. I truly appreciate that you took your time to do this interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
And share your knowledge.
To be on this podcast.
Well, it would be great to have you in the summit. That is something that I'm very excited to make that happen. But again, thanks for being here, and thanks for giving us your time. So,
thank you.
So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hustle Show. If you like it, please click the like button below, and also share with your friends. Until next time.
Yes. Bye, guys.